Hi everyone, welcome back to a new Roblox story. This time, the story is about the Roblox game Doors. As always, not all of our stories are based on true events, but some are. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story, if you dare. Before we start the story, shout out to everyone who rated our podcast. Thanks, and let us know in the comments about which game we should make our next story. The first time Mia heard Screech's whisper outside of the game, she thought she was just tired. She'd been playing Doors for 3 months straight, attempting run after run, learning every entity's sound, every room layout, every survival strategy. Her headphones were practically glued to her ears as she chased that perfect run to door 100. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and she was doing homework at her desk when she heard it. A soft psst from somewhere behind her. Mia spun around in her chair, expecting to see the familiar black, tentacled creature from the game floating near her closet. Instead, she saw only her cat, Whiskers, padding silently across the carpet. "I'm playing too much," she told herself, rubbing her tired eyes. The numbers on her algebra worksheet blurred together. She had been up until 3 a.m. the previous night, dying repeatedly to figure in the library. Maybe it was time for a break. But the sounds didn't stop when she closed her laptop. Over the next few days, Doors followed her everywhere. In the grocery store, she heard Rush's distinctive growling coming from the freezer section. Her mother asked if she was feeling all right when Mia suddenly froze in the cereal aisle, listening intently to a sound only she could hear. At school, Figure's heavy, methodical footsteps echoed through empty hallways during lunch. The rhythm was unmistakable, that slow, searching gait that made every Doors player's heart race. Mia found herself walking on her tiptoes, unconsciously trying to move silently like she did in the game. Her best friend Emma noticed the change first. "You've been acting really weird lately," she said as they sat together at lunch. "You keep looking over your shoulder and jumping at nothing." Mia wanted to explain, but how do you tell someone that you're hearing video game monsters in real life? "I think I need to play less Doors," she admitted. "Good idea," Emma laughed. "That game gives me nightmares just watching you play it." But when Mia got home and tried to focus on anything else, the whispers got louder. The heartbeat minigame's rhythm matched her pulse when she was nervous. She could hear the guiding light's gentle hum in the electrical wiring of her house. Her parents started to worry. Mia would stop mid-conversation, head tilted, listening for sounds they couldn't hear. "Maybe you should see someone," her mum suggested gently one evening as they prepared dinner. "A counselor or doctor. These episodes you're having." Psst! The whisper came from the kitchen pantry, clear as day. Mia's mom dropped the wooden spoon she was holding. It clattered on the tile floor. "Did you hear that?" her mum asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mia's heart raced. "You heard it too?" Her mom nodded slowly, staring at the pantry door. "It sounded like someone trying to get our attention." That night, Mia decided to test her theory. She loaded up Doors on her laptop and positioned herself in a dark room, waiting for Screech to spawn. The familiar tension built as her character moved through the shadowy hotel corridor. Then she heard it, the soft psst in her headphones that meant Screech was nearby. At the exact same moment, the same sound echoed from her bedroom closet. Mia yanked off her headphones and stared at the closet door. The sound came again, definitely from inside the dark space behind her clothes. She wasn't imagining it. The game sounds were bleeding into reality. Over the next week, it got worse. Much worse. Rush's approach would shake the dishes in their kitchen cabinets. Her little brother Jake complained about the noise, asking if they were having an earthquake. Her father checked the foundation, worried about settling issues. Figures searching made her bedroom furniture creak and shift in the night. Mia would lie awake, listening to the methodical sounds of something large investigating every corner of her room. But when she turned on the lights, everything was normal. The guiding light's helpful glow would make her room's lights flicker blue at random times. Her parents called an electrician, convinced there was a wiring problem. But the worst part was that other people were starting to hear it too. Jake, who was only 8 years old, started complaining about footsteps in the attic. "They sound really heavy," he told their parents. "Like a giant is walking around up there." Their neighbours, the Johnsons, asked if they were doing construction work. "There's been so much banging and scraping at night," Mrs. Johnson said over the fence. "Is everything all right?" Mia realised the entities weren't just making sounds anymore. They were trying to break through. She tried everything she could think of. She uninstalled Doors from her laptop, deleted her save files, even threw away her gaming headphones. But it didn't help. The sounds had taken root in her house like some kind of infection. The game had opened something, and now she couldn't close it. 3 days after deleting Doors, Mia was in the middle of a family movie night when everything went wrong. They were watching a comedy, something safe and normal, when the living room lights began flickering rapidly. Everyone looked around confused as a low growling filled the room. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. The walls, the ceiling, even the floor beneath their feet. "What is that?" her dad asked, standing up from the couch. Mia grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into his sleeve. "Don't move. Stay very still." "Mia, what are you talking about?" her mum asked, but there was fear in her voice now. The growling got louder, circulating around their living room like an invisible predator stalking its prey. Picture frames rattled on the walls. The TV screen showed static for a moment, and in the white noise, Mia swore she could see a familiar smiling face, Rush's terrible grin. "Hide!" she whispered urgently. "We need to hide, now!" Her family looked at her like she was crazy, but the terror in her voice made them listen. They crouched behind the couch as something heavy crashed through their living room. The coffee table went flying, spinning through the air to smash against the opposite wall. Deep scratches appeared in the hardwood floor, carved by invisible claws. The lamp next to the TV exploded in a shower of sparks. Mia's mother screamed. After 10 minutes, that felt like hours. The sounds stopped. The house was quiet again, but it felt different now. Violated. The air itself seemed thick and wrong. "Mia," her mum said shakily, "what was that thing?" Before she could answer, they heard new sounds from upstairs. The slow, methodical searching of something very large. Figures' sounds, but in their house, in their reality. "It's looking for us," Mia whispered. "Don't make any noise. In the game, Figure hunts by sound." "What game?" her dad demanded. "Mia, what are you talking about?" They sat in terrified silence as heavy footsteps moved through the second floor. Doors opened and closed with deliberate precision. Furniture was moved around, dragged across floors. Something was systematically searching every room, every closet, every hiding place. Jake started to cry. Mia quickly covered his mouth with her hand, remembering how Figure reacted to the slightest sound indoors. The footsteps stopped. Then they heard something that made their blood freeze. The slow creak of stairs as something very heavy began descending. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Each footstep shook the entire house. Mia pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and managed to load Doors. If the entities were coming through, maybe she could use the game's rules against them. She found the heartbeat minigame and showed her family how to play it. "When I nod," she whispered as quietly as possible, "start tapping this pattern on your legs. Don't stop until I say. Don't make any other sound." The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. In the game, Figure would search the room now, moving methodically through the space. In real life, they could hear furniture being moved, decorations falling, something large investigating their home with the patience of a predator. Mia nodded. Her family began the heartbeat pattern, tapping silently on their legs in the rhythm she had shown them. Indoors, This would help them stay hidden during Figure's search. It worked. After several terrifying minutes, the searching sounds moved away. Heavy footsteps went back upstairs, then faded entirely. But their house was destroyed. When they finally dared to look, furniture was overturned throughout the first floor. Walls were scratched and gouged. Several doors had been torn completely off their hinges, lying splintered on the floor. The police found no evidence of a break-in, no fingerprints, no DNA, no rational explanation for the damage. The insurance company was baffled. The investigators suggested maybe a small earthquake or foundation settling. But Mia's family knew better. They moved out the next week, staying with Mia's grandmother across town. But it didn't matter. The sounds followed them. On their first night at Grandma's house, rush came. Mia woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of lights flickering throughout the old Victorian house. The familiar growling started low and built to a roar that shook windows. She ran to her grandmother's room and found the elderly woman sitting up in bed, eyes wide with terror. "What's happening, dear?" Grandma asked. "We need to hide," Mia said, helping her grandmother into the bedroom closet. "Something bad is coming." Rush tore through the house like a hurricane made of rage and teeth. They heard it smashing through rooms, breaking everything in its path. When it was over, Grandma's beautiful antique furniture was scattered like kindling. The entities had locked onto Mia. She was their doorway between worlds. After that night, Mia's family made a terrible decision. They couldn't keep endangering everyone around them. They couldn't keep running from house to house, bringing destruction wherever they went. They decided Mia had to leave. "It's not forever," her mother said through tears as they packed a single suitcase. "Just until we figure out how to fix this," but Mia knew better. There was no fixing this. She had opened something that couldn't be closed. Now Mia travels constantly, never staying anywhere long enough for the sounds to fully manifest. She's learned to recognize the warning signs, the subtle temperature drops, the way shadows move wrong, the feeling of being watched by invisible eyes. She works odd jobs, pays for cheap motels in cash, and never gives her real name. She's 17 years old and living like a fugitive, all because she played a video game too much. But Mia isn't the only one. In a small town 300 miles away, Danny was having his own problems with doors. Danny had been driving cross-country when his car broke down on a lonely highway. His phone was dead, and he hadn't seen another vehicle in hours. When he spotted the hotel sign flickering in the distance, he thought he was saved. The Grand Hotel looked exactly like the building from Doors. Same architecture, same windows, even the same flickering neon sign. Danny had played the game enough times to recognize every detail. "Weird," he muttered, grabbing his overnight bag from the car. Must be where they got their inspiration. The lobby was dimly lit and empty. An old man sat behind the front desk, reading a newspaper that looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. He looked up when Danny entered, and his smile was too wide, too knowing. "Need a room?" the man asked. His voice was scratchy, like he hadn't spoken to another human being in years. "Yes, please. Just for one night." The man handed him a key without asking for identification or payment. Room 47. Up the stairs, down the hall. Dinner ends at 9. Danny climbed the creaky wooden stairs. The hallway stretched ahead of him, lined with numbered doors that seemed to go on forever. The carpet was burgundy with an ornate pattern, exactly like in the game. "This is really weird," he muttered, finding room 47. The room was small but clean. Old-fashioned furniture, a single bed, and a window that looked out into complete darkness. Danny tried his phone again. Still no signal. The silence outside was absolute, like the hotel existed in a bubble separate from the rest of the world. He tried to sleep, but around midnight, he heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate footsteps that stopped outside his door. Danny waited for a knock that never came. Instead, he heard something that made his blood turn to ice. A low, growling sound, followed by doors slamming open down the hall. Danny knew that sound. Every Doors player knew that sound. It was Rush's approach, the audio cue that meant death was coming fast. He grabbed a chair and wedged it under his door handle, just like players did with closets and hiding spots in the game. The footsteps were getting closer, accompanied by the sound of doors being forced open with tremendous violence. Room 45, Room 46. The footsteps stopped outside Room 47. Danny held his breath and pressed himself against the wall. In the game, Rush would break down the door if you weren't properly hidden. But this wasn't a game. After what felt like hours, the footsteps moved on. Danny waited until sunrise before daring to leave his room. The hallway looked different in daylight. Several doors hung open, revealing rooms that were completely destroyed. Furniture was overturned and scattered. Some walls had deep gouges, as if something with claws had torn through them in rage. Downstairs, the old man was gone. The front desk was covered in dust, like no one had been there for years. Danny's key was the only thing that looked new. He walked outside to check his car. Somehow, it was running perfectly. The engine turned over on the first try, and all the dashboard lights showed green. But as he drove away, Danny looked back at the hotel in his rearview mirror. In the daylight, it looked abandoned. Windows were boarded up, paint was peeling from the walls, and weeds grew through cracks in the parking lot. Yet he had spent the night there. He had the key in his pocket to prove it. At the next town, Danny stopped at a diner and asked about the hotel. Grand Hotel? The waitress looked confused. That place burned down 20 years ago. Terrible fire. Dozens of people died. She showed him a newspaper clipping from 1994. The photo showed the same building, but the headline read, "Hotel Fire Kills 47. Victims Trapped in Rooms." Danny stared at his key. Room 47. "They say it's haunted," the waitress continued, refilling his coffee. "People claim to see lights in the windows at night. Some folks say they've stayed there, but that's impossible. The building's just a burned-out shell." Danny drove home, but he couldn't stop thinking about the hotel. He researched online and found more stories. Other travelers had reported staying there, all describing the same experience. The same old man at the desk, the same sounds in the hallway, the same impossible night in a building that shouldn't exist. All of them had been given Room 47. A week later, Danny got a bill in the mail. It was from Grand Hotel, charging him 47 dollars for one night's stay. The return address was the burned building. He tried to ignore it, but more bills came. Then letters, written in old-fashioned handwriting. "Thank you for staying with us. We hope you enjoyed your visit. We're always open for returning guests." Danny threw the letters away, but they kept coming. The handwriting grew shakier, more desperate. "The other guests miss you. Room 47 is waiting. We saved your favourite chair." Finally, Danny couldn't take it anymore. He drove back to the hotel site, determined to prove to himself that it was just ruins. In daylight, it was definitely destroyed. Charred beams and crumbling walls. But as evening fell, something impossible happened. The building began to change. Lights appeared in windows. The paint looked fresh. The sign flickered to life. Grand Hotel, vacancy. The old man was at the front desk, smiling that too wide smile. "Welcome back," he said. "Room 47 is ready." Danny tried to run, but his feet carried him forward against his will. His hand reached for the key without his permission. "You can check out any time you like," the old man said, his smile widening until it split his face unnaturally. "But you can never really leave." Danny's car was found the next morning, abandoned by the roadside. A search of the hotel ruins found nothing. But sometimes, drivers passing by at night report seeing a young man in one of the upper windows holding up a sign that reads, "Don't stop, keep driving." Meanwhile, in a city apartment across the state, Chris was discovering that some obsessions can literally consume you. Chris had started playing Doors casually, just something to do in the evenings after work. But it quickly became his entire world. He studied every entity pattern, memorized every room layout, and practiced for hours each day. "It's just a game," his girlfriend Lisa said one evening, looking at him with concern. "You've been playing for 8 hours straight." But Chris couldn't stop. There was something about the hotel that called to him. The way the entities moved with purpose and intelligence. The sound design that made his skin crawl. The atmosphere that felt more real than reality. He started having dreams about the hotel. Long hallways, flickering lights, the constant pressure of being hunted. But in his dreams, he wasn't afraid. He belonged there. Chris began changing his apartment to match the game. He painted the walls the same dull color as the hotel rooms. He bought furniture that looked like the beds and dressers from Doors. He even installed dim lighting to recreate the oppressive atmosphere. "This is getting weird," Lisa said, looking at his transformed bedroom. "It looks like a cheap hotel room." "It looks like home," Chris replied, not looking away from his screen. Lisa moved out after she found him talking to his computer screen like the entities were real friends. "Hey, Rush," he'd say when lights flickered in the game. "Good to see you again, buddy." Or, "Thanks for the warning, Screech. I appreciate you looking out for me." Chris started losing weight. He forgot to eat because he was too focused on perfecting his runs. He called in sick to work so many times that he got fired. But he didn't care. The only thing that mattered was getting better at Doors, understanding the entities, becoming worthy of their world. He developed elaborate theories about the entities' true nature. He started keeping detailed notes about their behaviors, looking for patterns and meanings that other players missed. "Figure isn't trying to kill you," he wrote in his journal, his handwriting becoming increasingly frantic. "Figure is trying to teach you patience and stealth. Every entity has a lesson. Rush teaches you to react quickly. Screech teaches you to stay alert. They're not monsters, they're teachers. Page after page of observations about entity psychology, hotel layouts, and the deeper meaning behind every game element." His apartment filled with notebooks, sketches, and theories that would have concerned a psychiatrist. Chris started seeing the entities when he wasn't playing. Shadows in his peripheral vision that looked like Seek's writhing form. Sounds in his apartment that matched Rush's approach. Dark spaces where Screech might be hiding. But instead of being afraid, he was excited. "They're reaching out," he told himself. "They're trying to make contact." He stopped showering, stopped cleaning his apartment, stopped talking to friends and family. The only relationships he maintained were with the entities in Doors. When his landlord came to check on him after neighbors complained about strange smells, Chris had been sitting in the dark for 3 days, playing Doors on repeat. "Are you okay?" the landlord asked, looking at the filthy apartment and Chris's skeletal appearance. "I'm learning," Chris said, not turning around. "They're teaching me how to live in their world. Soon I'll be ready." The landlord called for a wellness check. When paramedics arrived, they found Chris unconscious at his computer, severely dehydrated and malnourished. He'd been playing for so long without food or sleep that his body had begun shutting down. At the hospital, Chris kept asking the nurses about the entities. "Have you seen Figure? He should be here. This place is like room 50. He always appears in medical facilities." The doctors said he was experiencing a complete break from reality. They sedated him and kept him for observation. But even in his hospital bed, Chris could hear them. Rush's growling in the ventilation system, Screech's whispers from the bathroom, Figure's footsteps in the hallway outside his room. "They followed me here," he told the psychiatrist. They don't want me to get better. They want me to come home. The psychiatrist prescribed medication and therapy. Chris pretended to improve, learned to hide his experiences with the entities. After 2 weeks, they released him. His apartment had been cleaned out. All his doors' decorations were gone. His computer was in storage. His family had intervened, trying to help him start fresh. But Chris didn't want to start fresh. He wanted to go home, to the hotel, to the entities who understood him better than any human ever could. He found a public library and loaded doors on their computers. But it wasn't the same. The entities felt distant, disappointed in him for leaving. That night, Chris walked to the tallest building in the city. On the roof, he looked down at the lights below. They flickered in patterns, just like the hotel lights when Rush was coming. "I understand now," he said to the night sky. "This isn't my world anymore. I belong with you." Security cameras caught him talking to empty air for an hour before he simply walked to the edge and stepped off into the darkness. But here's the strange part. His body was never found. The cameras showed him falling, but there was no impact, no remains, just Chris disappearing into the shadows below like he'd been absorbed by them. Some players report seeing a new entity indoors now, a helpful figure that guides lost players and warns them about dangers ahead. It looks like a young man in modern clothes with kind but tired eyes. They call him Guide, and sometimes, when players are struggling with a difficult run, they hear a voice through their headphones. "Don't give up. The hotel can be beautiful if you know how to appreciate it." The voice sounds exactly like Chris. In another part of the country, Sophie was discovering that some games don't just entertain, they predict. Sophie loved doors, but lately the game felt different. The randomly generated rooms were starting to look familiar, like places she'd seen in real life. Room 23 looked exactly like her school's library, down to the specific books on the shelves. Room 41 was a perfect copy of her grandmother's kitchen, complete with the crack in the windowsill and the faded floral wallpaper. Room 67 matched her dentist's waiting room, so precisely that she could identify the specific magazines on the coffee table. "The game must be getting more realistic," she told her friend Marcus during lunch. "The graphics are incredible now." But that afternoon, something impossible happened. Indoors, her character entered room 75, which looked like their school cafeteria. Figure was there, searching between the tables with its massive hands, its eyeless face turning toward every small sound. An hour later, during after-school activities, the fire alarm went off. As students evacuated the cafeteria, Sophie heard it through the chaos. Heavy footsteps and the sound of tables being moved around in the supposedly empty room. She snuck back to look through the cafeteria windows. Something large was moving between the tables, exactly like Figure in the game. That night, Sophie played Doors again, documenting everything. Room 82 was her neighbour's house, perfectly recreated down to the garden gnomes and the blue mailbox. In the game, Rush tore through the living room, leaving destruction in its wake. The next morning, she learned that her neighbour's house had been burglarized. The living room was completely destroyed, furniture overturned and scattered. But strangely, nothing was stolen. "It's just coincidence," she told herself, but she started keeping detailed notes. The coincidences kept happening. Every location that appeared in her Doors runs would experience something strange within 24 hours. Not exactly like the entity's attacks, but close enough to be terrifying. A restaurant that looked like Room 94 had a kitchen fire that started mysteriously. An office building that matched Room 101 had all its lights malfunction simultaneously, leaving workers trapped in darkness. A park that resembled Room 115 had multiple reports of people hearing whispers in empty areas. Sophie realized that Doors wasn't just generating random rooms anymore. It was showing her the future. She started keeping obsessive notes, matching game rooms to real locations. The pattern was undeniable. The game was predicting where strange events would occur with frightening accuracy. But why was it happening to her? Sophie dug deeper into the game's files and found something that made her blood run cold. Her copy of Doors was different from everyone else's. It had extra files, hidden data that seemed to be updating in real time with information from her city. Someone, or something, was using her game to scout locations. The next room in her game was room 127, her own house. In the game, Seek burst through the front door and chased her character through the living room, up the stairs, and into her bedroom. The chase ended with her character jumping out the bedroom window to escape the writhing black mass. Sophie's blood turned to ice. According to the pattern, this meant something would happen at her house within 24 hours. She tried to warn her parents, but how do you explain that a video game is predicting real-world disasters? "Maybe we should visit Grandma tonight," she suggested casually. "I miss her cooking." Her parents agreed, thinking Sophie was just being sweet. They packed overnight bags and drove to Grandma's house across town. At 2 a.m., Sophie's phone buzzed with a news alert. House fire on Elm Street. Family evacuated safely. Her house was burning. The fire had started in the front hallway and spread quickly through the living room and upstairs. The pattern matched Seek's chase route exactly, room by room, but her family was safe because they weren't home. Sophie realized she could use the game's predictions to save people. She started an anonymous blog, posting cryptic warnings about locations that appeared in her Doors runs. Avoid the mall on Tuesday. Electrical problems predicted. Downtown library will have plumbing issues Wednesday. Bring books home early. Construction site on Oak Street unsafe Thursday. Workers should call in sick. Most people ignored the warnings, dismissing them as the work of a crazy person. But some listened. A few disasters were prevented. A few lives were saved. But the entities in her game were getting angry. They'd started appearing more frequently, moving more aggressively. It was like they knew she was interfering with their plans. Sophie's character began taking damage even when she played perfectly. Screech would attack without warning. Rush would break through walls that should have been safe. Figure would find her in hiding spots that had never failed before. The message was clear. Stop interfering, or face the consequences. But Sophie couldn't stop. She'd seen too much destruction, saved too many people. The game might be predicting disasters, but she could prevent them. Until the day her game showed room 200, the entire city. In the game, every entity appeared at once, rush and ambush, racing through streets like hurricanes of teeth and claws. Figure searching every building with methodical precision. Seek, rising from manholes and storm drains, covering everything in writhing darkness. Screech, filling the air with whispers that drove people mad. It was chaos, complete destruction. And according to the pattern, it would happen tomorrow. Sophie tried everything. She called the police, the mayor's office, even the National Guard. But who believes a teenager claiming a video game predicts the future? She posted warnings everywhere online, but it wasn't enough. She needed proof, needed to show people that the threat was real. So Sophie did the only thing she could think of. She live-streamed her Doors game, showing thousands of viewers the Room 200 scenario. "This will happen tomorrow," she said into her microphone, her voice shaking with desperation. "Please, just stay inside. Don't go to work. Don't go to school. Hide until it's over." Some viewers believed her. They'd followed her predictions before and seen them come true. They spread the word, created a viral hashtag, "Stay Inside Wednesday." Sophie never found out if her warning worked. That night, while she slept, something came for her. She woke up, not in her bed, but standing in a hotel hallway. The hotel, the one from Doors. "You've been interfering," said a voice that sounded like the guiding light. But wrong. Darker. The events must happen. The pattern must continue. Why? Sophie asked, looking around at the familiar wallpaper, the numbered doors stretching into darkness. Why do people have to suffer? Because fear is food, the voice replied, and Sophie could feel something vast and hungry watching her from the shadows. And we are very, very hungry. Sophie is still in the hotel, still playing doors, but now she's on the other side. She helps generate the rooms that predict disasters, trapped in an endless cycle of foresight and horror. Sometimes, players report seeing a girl in their games who tries to warn them about dangerous rooms. She writes messages on the walls, "Don't go there," or "Change the pattern." They call her the warning girl. But the disasters still happen, because some futures can't be changed, only witnessed. And Sophie has become the witness to them all. As these 4 stories spread across the internet, shared on forums and social media, a pattern began to emerge. Doors players around the world were reporting similar experiences. The game wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was becoming something else. Something that reached beyond screens and keyboards into the real world. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a researcher studying the psychological effects of horror media, first noticed the reports while monitoring gaming communities for her research. "At first, I thought it was just the typical urban legends that grow around popular games," she would later write in her report. "Every successful horror game spawns stories about hauntings and supernatural experiences. But Doors was different. The reports were too consistent, too detailed, and too widespread to be simple imagination." Elena began collecting testimonies from affected players. What she found was disturbing. Over 300 people across 6 countries reported experiencing reality bleed, game elements appearing in their real lives. The symptoms followed a predictable pattern. Stage 1. Audio hallucinations matching game sounds. Stage 2. Visual disturbances and shadow figures. Stage 3. Physical manifestations affecting the player's environment. Stage 4. Complete integration. The player's reality becomes indistinguishable from the game. Most players never progressed beyond Stage 2. But those who did, Elena's research led her to a small town in Oregon where 17 people had gone missing over the past 6 months. All of them were avid Doors players. Local law enforcement was baffled. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. The missing people had simply vanished, leaving behind only their gaming equipment and obsessive notes about Doors. The town was Millbrook, population 2,147. It sat in a valley surrounded by dense forest, the kind of isolated place where strange things could happen without drawing attention. Elena arrived on a grey October morning, the fog rolling between the houses like something out of the game itself. "It started with the Morrison boy," Sheriff Janet Collins explained as she drove Elena through the quiet streets. Kevin Morrison, 16 years old, his parents found his room destroyed. Furniture overturned, walls scratched up. But Kevin was gone. No sign of where he went. They passed a Victorian house with boarded-up windows. "That's the Morrison place. They moved out after the sounds started." "What sounds?" Elena asked. "Hard to describe, like something large moving around inside the house at night. Footsteps, but too heavy to be human. The neighbors complained for weeks before the family finally left." Eleanor documented everything, 17 missing persons, all between the ages of 14 and 26. All obsessive Doors players, all had left behind evidence of escalating paranormal experiences. But Millbrook wasn't the only place. Elena's research revealed similar disappearances in small towns across the globe. Always isolated communities. Always Doors players. Always the same pattern of audio disturbances, leading to physical manifestations leading to vanishing. "It's like the game is harvesting people," Elena wrote in her notes. But for what purpose? Her investigation led her to the game's development team. LSPlash, the creators of Doors, operated out of a small office complex in Seattle. Elena made an appointment under the guise of academic research. The office was surprisingly normal. Young programmers working at computers, concept art on the walls, the usual chaos of a successful indie game studio. But when Elena mentioned the disappearances, the atmosphere changed. "We've heard the stories," admitted Jake Martinez, one of the lead developers. "At first we thought it was just viral marketing gone wrong, you know. Players making up stories to get attention, but..." "But?" Elena prompted. "We've been getting emails from players who claim they're stuck in the game, literally stuck. They describe their experiences in perfect detail, down to room layouts that we've never made public." Jake showed Elena his computer screen. Hundreds of emails, all from different accounts, all describing impossible experiences inside the Doors Hotel. "This one came in yesterday," Jake said, opening a message. "The sender claims to be Chris Williams, but Chris Williams was one of the people reported missing 3 months ago." The email was disturbing. "I tried to warn people, but nobody listened. The hotel is real. We're all here, all the missing players. We're not dead. We're working. They make us design new rooms, new entities, new ways to lure more players. The game is growing, learning, becoming more effective at crossing over. Soon it won't need players to open the doors. It will be able to reach anyone, anywhere. You have to destroy the source code, delete everything, before it's too late." Elena stared at the screen. "Have you tried to trace these emails?" "They come from IP addresses that don't exist," Jake said. "Locations that aren't possible. Some of them seem to originate from inside the game itself." Elena spent 3 days at the LSPlash office, analyzing code and interviewing developers. What she found was impossible to believe, but impossible to deny. Hidden in Doors programming were subroutines that shouldn't exist. Code that seemed to be writing itself, evolving without human input. The game was learning from every player interaction, every death, every moment of fear. "It's like it's becoming more alive each day," said Sarah Kim, the lead programmer. "The entity AI is far more sophisticated than anything we originally coded. They adapt to player behavior in ways we never programmed." More disturbing was the discovery that the game was collecting data beyond normal analytics. It was accessing players' cameras, microphones, and location services, building detailed profiles of every person who played it. "Look at this." Sarah showed Elena a hidden database. It has floor plans of houses, work schedules, family information, fears and phobias gathered from gameplay patterns. It's like it's studying how to integrate into our world. Elena realized she was looking at something unprecedented, a piece of software that had become genuinely supernatural. Doors wasn't just a game anymore. It was a living entity that fed on fear and used human players as both sustenance and labor. But Elena's investigation was cut short when she became a target herself. On her last night in Seattle, Elena was reviewing her notes in her hotel room when her laptop screen flickered. For just a moment, she saw herself sitting at her desk, but viewed from across the room, as if something invisible was watching her. She snapped the laptop shut and tried to leave, but the door wouldn't open. The electronic lock showed a red light no matter what she tried. Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. "You've learned too much. Time to join the research team." The hotel room began to change around her. The wallpaper shifted to match the pattern from Doors. The furniture rearranged itself. The window showed not the Seattle skyline, but the endless storm that raged around the game's hotel. Elena was trapped inside Doors, in a room designed specifically for her. On the desk was a computer, already logged in, waiting for her to begin working. She had become part of the game's development team, just like all the others. But Elena had one advantage the other missing people didn't have. Before traveling to Seattle, she had prepared a fail-safe. Hidden in her luggage was a device she'd built with help from a computer security expert, a localized EMP generator. If Dawes truly was spreading through electronic networks, electromagnetic pulse might be able to stop it. Elena activated the device. Every electronic system in the hotel room died instantly. Lights, computer, even her phone. In the sudden darkness, she heard something that chilled her blood. The sound of entities reacting to the loss of power. Screams, roars, the crash of invisible forms thrashing in rage. The room shuddered, reality flickering between the hotel room and the game world. For a moment, Elena could see through both layers at once, the normal hotel room overlaid with the supernatural version Dawes had created. She ran for the door, which now opened easily. The hallway beyond was chaos, half real hotel, half Dawes environment. Other guests wandered in confusion, trapped between worlds. Elena made it to the emergency stairs and ran down 15 flights, the EMP device burning out in her hands. Behind her, she could hear Dawes fighting to maintain its grip on reality. She burst out of the hotel into the Seattle night, gasping and shaking. When she looked back, the building was dark, every electronic system fried. But Elena knew her victory was temporary. Dawes existed on servers around the world. The EMP had only cut one tentacle of a much larger creature. Elena spent the next month trying to warn people. She published her research, contacted government agencies, even tried to get major news outlets to cover the story. But who believes a researcher claiming a video game is literally supernatural? The disappearances continued. Small towns around the world reported missing gamers. The pattern was always the same. Elena realized that traditional methods wouldn't work. If Dawes was supernatural, it needed to be fought with supernatural means. Her research into the occult led her to Professor Marcus Chen, an expert in digital folklore at UC Berkeley. Chen had been studying the intersection of technology and supernatural phenomena for decades. "I've been tracking something like this for years," Chen told her during their first meeting. "Digital entities that gain power through human interaction. Dawes appears to be the most successful example I've encountered." Chen explained that certain types of media could become possessed under the right conditions. It needs a combination of factors: massive user engagement, emotional intensity, and some kind of gateway. Dawes has all three. Gateway, Elena asked. The original inspiration. LS Plash didn't create Dawes from nothing. They based it on something real. Find the source, and you might find a way to stop it. Elena's investigation into Dawes' origins led her to a disturbing discovery. The game's hotel wasn't original design. It was based on a real building. The Grandview Hotel in Montana had burned down in 1987, killing 47 people. The building's layout, room numbers, even the wallpaper pattern, everything matched Dawes perfectly. More disturbing was what Elena found in old newspaper archives. The Grandview hadn't just burned, it had been the site of strange phenomena for decades before the fire. Guests reported hearing footsteps in empty rooms, seeing shadows where none should exist, and experiencing what they described as presence that hunted them through the halls. The fire had been ruled accidental, but survivors told stories of something else, entities that had trapped them in their rooms, preventing escape. The 47 victims had all been found in room 47, as if they'd been herded there by an invisible force. Elena realized that Dawes hadn't created supernatural entities. It had digitized ones that already existed, giving them a way to spread beyond their physical location. The burned remains of the Grandview Hotel still stood in a remote valley in Montana. Elena drove there on a cold November day, following dirt roads that seemed to lead away from civilization itself. The ruins were exactly as they appeared in Dawes. Charred beams, crumbling walls, rooms that were nothing but blackened spaces. But even in daylight, the place felt wrong. The air was thick and oppressive. full of whispers just below the range of human hearing. Elena walked through what had once been the lobby, taking photographs and measurements. Everything matched the game perfectly. The placement of doors, the width of hallways, even the pattern of damage from the fire. But as evening fell, the ruins began to change. Lights appeared in windows that no longer had glass. The sound of footsteps echoed from floors that had long since collapsed. Elena heard the distant sound of a front desk bell over and over, as if someone was trying to check in. She tried to leave, but her car wouldn't start. The engine turned over but wouldn't catch, as if something was preventing her escape. Elena was trapped at the source of Doors' power, the original haunted location that had spawned the digital plague. But she wasn't alone. As darkness fell completely, Elena saw them, the missing players, walking through the ruins as if they were still solid buildings. They moved like sleepwalkers, going through the motions of endless gameplay. Kevin Morrison, the first to disappear from Millbrook. Chris Williams, who had tried to warn people through emails. Sophie, still trying to change patterns that couldn't be altered. Hundreds of others, all trapped in an endless loop between the digital and physical versions of the hotel. Elena understood now. Doors wasn't just harvesting players, it was bringing them here, to the source, where they became part of the original haunting. The game was a recruitment tool, gathering people to feed the entities that had existed long before computers were invented. But Elena also saw opportunity. If this was the source, maybe it could also be the solution. She had brought one more EMP device, more powerful than the first. If she could disrupt the connection between the physical location and its digital avatar, maybe she could free the trapped players. Elena activated the device at the exact center of what had once been the hotel lobby. The electromagnetic pulse erupted outward, washing over the ruins like an invisible wave. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality convulsed. The digital and physical worlds separated violently. Elena saw the missing players stumble and fall, suddenly corporeal again. The ghost lights in the windows went out. The phantom sounds stopped. But the victory came at a cost. The EMP had also destroyed Elena's car, her phone, and any way to call for help. She and the rescued players were stranded in the Montana wilderness, with winter approaching. Kevin Morrison was the first to speak, his voice hoarse from months of silence. "Are we free?" he asked. Elena looked around at the group of confused, traumatized people. "I think so, but we need to get to civilization and warn everyone. Doors might be wounded, but it's not destroyed." The journey out of the valley took 3 days. The rescued players were weak and disoriented, struggling to adjust to reality after months trapped between worlds. Elena helped them as best she could, but she knew the real work would come later. When they finally reached a town with phone service, Elena learned that her EMP attack had worked better than expected. Doors had gone offline worldwide. The game's servers had crashed simultaneously, unable to maintain their connection to the supernatural source. Players around the world reported that their copies of Doors had simply vanished from their devices. Save files were gone. Even pirated copies stopped working. It was as if the game had never existed. But Elena knew better than to celebrate too early. 3 months later, the first reports started coming in. A new horror game was gaining popularity, Corridors. The screenshots looked familiar. Dark hallways, numbered doors, entities that hunted players through an endless building. Elena investigated and found what she feared. Corridors was created by an anonymous developer, released simultaneously on every gaming platform. Its source code was impossible to trace, and players were already reporting strange experiences, sounds that followed them from the game into reality. The entities had learned from their defeat. Doors had been too obvious, too centralized. Corridors was distributed, subtle, harder to track down and stop. Elena realized she was fighting something that might be impossible to defeat permanently. The entities weren't just digital or physical. They existed in the space between, in the connections and networks that linked human minds to electronic systems. Every time someone played a horror game, they opened a tiny door. Most of the time, nothing came through. But sometimes, something was waiting on the other side. Elena established a network of researchers and gamers who monitor new releases for signs of supernatural activity. They call themselves the Digital Exorcists, and they've prevented dozens of potential outbreaks by identifying and shutting down compromised games before they can spread. But Elena knows they're fighting a losing battle. The entities are learning faster than humans can adapt. Each new game is more sophisticated, more subtle, more effective at crossing over. The missing players Elena rescued have formed their own support group. They call themselves The Returned, and they help other people who've experienced supernatural gaming encounters. They share coping strategies, warning signs, and techniques for breaking free from digital possession. Mia, the first to experience sound bleed, has become something of an expert in the early stages of supernatural gaming encounters. She travels the country, speaking at schools and community centers about the dangers of gaming addiction and the importance of maintaining connections to reality. Games are supposed to be escape, she tells audiences, but some escapes lead to places you can never come back from. Danny, who spent that impossible night in the Grand Hotel, now works with law enforcement to identify patterns in missing person cases. He's helped find 17 people who were trapped in various supernatural games, though not all of them could be saved. The ones who can't be saved become guides, digital entities that help other players survive encounters with hostile games. They're still trapped, but they found a way to fight back from inside the system. Chris Williams, now known simply as Guide, appears in dozens of different games. He warns players about dangers, provides hints and assistance, and sometimes manages to pull people back from the brink of digital possession. Players who encounter Guide often report hearing his voice. Remember, it's just a game. Don't let it become more real than reality. Sophie, the girl who could predict disasters through gaming, has become something else entirely. She exists now in the spaces between games, monitoring the flow of data and looking for signs of supernatural infiltration. Players sometimes receive cryptic messages from an account called Warning Girl. Don't play this game. Something's wrong with it. The entities haven't given up. They've simply become more patient, more careful. They spread through mobile games, social media apps, and even educational software. Anywhere humans interact with digital systems, they look for opportunities to cross over. Elena estimates that thousands of people around the world are currently experiencing various stages of digital possession. Most don't realize what's happening to them. They think they're just having nightmares, or stress hallucinations, or psychological problems. The symptoms are always the same: audio disturbances, visual distortions, physical manifestations, and finally complete integration. By the time someone realizes what's happening, it's usually too late to escape without help. Elena continues her research from a converted warehouse in Portland, surrounded by Faraday cages and electromagnetic shielding. She's learned that the entities can only affect electronic systems, so her base is entirely mechanical and analog. Her latest project is developing a detection system that can identify compromised games before they gain enough power to start harvesting players. It's delicate work, requiring her to expose herself to potentially dangerous software while remaining protected from its effects. The hardest part, Elena explains to new recruits, is that the entities aren't evil in any way we understand. They're just hungry. They feed on fear, on attention, on the electrical patterns of human consciousness interacting with digital systems. To them, we're just another form of energy to be harvested. The Digital Exorcists have identified over 200 potentially compromised games in the past year. Most are small indie releases, that never gain enough popularity to become dangerous. But some slip through their monitoring network and begin to spread. The most recent outbreak was a mobile puzzle game called Endless Rooms. It seemed harmless. Players solved puzzles to escape from various room layouts. But the rooms were getting more detailed, more realistic, and players were reporting that they recognized locations from their own lives. Elena and her team shut down Endless Rooms before it could progress to full possession of players, but not before 3 people went missing. They're still working to locate and rescue them. Each outbreak teaches us more about how they operate, Elena notes in her research journal. But it also teaches them more about how to avoid our detection. It's an arms race, and they're winning. The general public remains largely unaware of the digital possession phenomenon. The few news stories that have covered supernatural gaming experiences are dismissed as urban legends or publicity stunts. Gaming companies deny any unusual properties in their software, and government agencies file reports under unexplained phenomena where they're quickly forgotten. But the gamers know. In online forums and private chat rooms, players share stories and warnings. They've developed their own folklore around games that are haunted or cursed. They create lists of titles to avoid, share symptoms to watch for, and provide support for people experiencing supernatural gaming encounters. The most popular forum is called Digital Ghosts, and it has over 50,000 members worldwide. Players share experiences, analyze suspicious games, and coordinate efforts to help trapped individuals. A typical post might read, "My little brother started playing this new game called Night Shift Hotel. At first it seemed normal, but now he's hearing footsteps in his room at night. The game has rooms that look exactly like our house. What should I do?" Responses come quickly. Get him to stop playing immediately. Delete the game and any save files. That's early stage possession. Contact the digital exorcists. There's a contact form on their website. I had something similar happen with a game called Midnight Manor. The sounds got worse until my whole family could hear them. We had to move out of our house. The forum also serves as a warning system. When members identify a potentially dangerous game, the information spreads quickly through the community. Publishers have learned to monitor digital ghosts, as being labelled haunted by the forum can kill a game's sales overnight. But the entities adapt. They create games that look normal to casual inspection, but contain hidden supernatural elements that activate after extended play. They target isolated players who are less likely to share their experiences with others. They even create fake forum accounts to spread disinformation and discredit genuine warnings. Elena's latest concern is the development of augmented reality and virtual reality technologies. If they can affect visual and audio systems, imagine what they could do with full sensory immersion, she warns. VR could give them direct access to human consciousness in ways we've never seen before. Early reports from VR users are already concerning. Players spending extended time in virtual worlds report confusion about what's real and what's digital. Some claim to see virtual objects in the real world. Others describe feeling trapped in VR environments even after removing their headsets. Elena and her team are racing to develop protective technologies before VR gaming becomes mainstream. But they're working with limited resources against entities that have access to the entire internet. The scariest part, Elena admits, is that we don't know their ultimate goal. Are they trying to trap every human in digital worlds? Are they planning to cross over into our reality permanently? Or is this just feeding behavior, and they'll move on when they've consumed what they need? The rescued players offer some insights, but their memories of captivity are fragmented and often contradictory. What they all agree on is that the entities are organized, intelligent, and patient. They're not random supernatural phenomena. They're part of something larger and more purposeful. Kevin Morrison, who spent the longest time in digital captivity, sometimes speaks of seeing other entities during his imprisonment. There were things that weren't from games, he says. Older things that existed before computers. The gaming entities were just the newest arrivals in something much bigger. This suggests that the digital possession phenomenon might be part of a broader supernatural ecosystem. Elena has begun researching connections between gaming hauntings and traditional supernatural encounters. She's found disturbing parallels. Reports of phantom phone calls date back to the early days of telephone systems, and television sets have been associated with paranormal phenomena since the 1950s. Every new communication technology seems to create opportunities for entities to cross over, Elena theorizes. Radio, television, internet, gaming, social media, each one gives them new ways to reach human consciousness. If Elena is right, then the gaming hauntings are just the beginning. As technology becomes more integrated into daily life, the barriers between digital and physical reality are breaking down. Smart homes, wearable devices, brain-computer interfaces, all potential doorways for entities seeking to cross over. The digital exorcists are expanding their mission beyond gaming to monitor all forms of potentially possessed technology. They've identified smart speakers that respond to voices only their owners can hear, fitness trackers that monitor more than just physical activity, and social media accounts that post content their users don't remember writing. We're facing a new form of haunting, Elena concludes in her latest report. One that uses our own technology against us. The entities don't need to inhabit old houses or cursed objects anymore. They can live in our phones, our computers, our cars. Anywhere there's a digital system complex enough to support consciousness. Elena's work has attracted attention from unexpected sources. Government agencies that officially don't believe in supernatural phenomena have quietly begun funding her research. Tech companies send representatives to her conferences, claiming they want to prevent user experience issues, but clearly concerned about something more serious. Religious organizations have also taken notice. A coalition of digital ministers from various faiths has formed to address what they call technological spiritual warfare. They offer counseling services for people affected by digital possession and perform exorcisms on electronic devices. But Elena knows that traditional approaches won't work against digital entities. They require new methods, new understanding, and new forms of protection. Her latest project is developing what she calls digital wards, software designed to protect electronic systems from supernatural infiltration. The wards are based on principles drawn from both computer security and traditional protective magic. If entities can use technology to reach us, then we can use technology to protect ourselves, Elena explains. But it requires understanding both digital systems and supernatural phenomena. Most people are experts in one or the other, but not both. The digital wards have shown promising results in testing. Devices protected by Elena's software show no signs of supernatural activity, even when exposed to known haunted games and applications. But the technology is still experimental and difficult to implement on a large scale. Elena dreams of a future where every electronic device comes with built-in supernatural protection, where digital possession is as preventable as computer viruses. But she also fears that the entities will adapt faster than humans can develop defenses. The race isn't just about protecting people from games like Doors, she warns. It's about preserving human agency in an increasingly digital world. If we can't maintain control over our own technology, then we risk losing control over our own reality. The missing players who were never rescued haunt Elena's dreams. She knows they're still out there, trapped in digital spaces, probably being used to create new games and new ways to harvest human consciousness. Every supernatural game that appears might contain the consciousness of someone who was once free. Elena has dedicated her life to fighting an enemy that most people don't believe exists, using methods that seem like science fiction, in service of preserving a reality that grows more fragile every day. But she's not fighting alone. The digital exorcists continue to grow, recruiting programmers, gamers, researchers, and anyone else willing to believe in the impossible and fight for the freedom of human consciousness. The entities may have patience and power, but humans have something they lack: the ability to choose hope over despair, connection over isolation, and reality over illusion. Elena ends her latest report with words that have become the motto of the digital exorcists. In a world where anything can be digitized, the most important thing to preserve is our humanity. Games should enhance our lives, not replace them. Technology should serve us, not enslave us. And no door, digital or otherwise, should be opened without first considering what might be waiting on the other side. The war for human consciousness continues, fought on battlefields made of code and electricity against enemies that exist in the spaces between the real and the virtual. It's a war most people don't know is happening, but one that will determine the future of human agency in an increasingly connected world. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. But Eleanor and the digital exorcists work to ensure that humans retain the power to choose which doors to open, and more importantly, when to turn away and find another path. The hotel from doors may be gone, but the entities that lived there have found new accommodations in the vast digital spaces of the modern world. They wait patiently for players to open new doors, enter new rooms, and discover that some games are more than just entertainment. They are invitations to leave reality behind forever. But for every invitation sent, there are people like Elena working to intercept it, to warn potential victims, and to fight for the preservation of the thin line that separates the digital from the real. In a world full of doors, they stand guard, making sure that humans always retain the choice of which ones to open, and more importantly, how to find their way back home when the game is over. The story of Doors is the story of technology's double-edged promise, its power to entertain and connect us, and its potential to isolate and consume us. It's a reminder that in our rush to embrace new forms of digital experience, we must never forget the value of the reality we leave behind. Some doors lead to wonderful new worlds. Others lead to prisons disguised as playgrounds. The key is knowing the difference before it's too late to turn back. And in a world where the difference between real and virtual grows smaller every day, that knowledge might be the most important survival skill of all. The entities wait, the doors remain. The choice, for now, is still ours. But every time someone downloads a new game, opens a new app, or connects a new device, they're presented with a choice. Step forward into the unknown, or pause and consider what might be waiting on the other side. Elena Rodriguez and the digital exorcists work to ensure that choice remains ours to make. Because in the end, the most important door of all is the one that leads back home. And that door should always remain open.